Hello. Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and that you're doing great today. We're about to start just now, as soon as I can make sure that people can hear me. Yes, great. Thank you for coming and welcome. Greetings from Brazil. Hello, everybody. So this is a pretty quick workshop, so I'm going to get started rather quickly as well so that we can get through everything. So I hope you're ready to learn about React and how to use it with AI. I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes to settle in before I get going. And this is a workshop where you can, it's going to be focused on doing work yourself. So if you are ready with your editor and somewhere to run React, that's ideal if you want to get the most out of the workshop. Okay. So based on what I've heard about you guys' background, a lot of you are new to React and especially AI in React. So I'm not assuming that much prior experience. And we're going to build a React interface in different layers and then learn about how to work with LLMs along the way and build this streaming AI chat. So first, a little bit about me. I work on the Next.js team at Vercel with developer experience, docs, and education. And I focus on teaching modern React patterns and best practices. And then I am the React certification lead for certificates dev. So a common discussion topic these days is whether AI is going to replace front-end developers. And I just wanted to talk about this because maybe some people would be worried that they no longer need to work as a front-end developer. But AI can generate the code, but still the most important decisions are for us developers. So actually our judgment is even more important than before. For AI, someone has to decide how to use the model output in an interface that people can understand and trust. And that's what we're going to learn today. So we're going to use React and Next.js to have a backend for our React frontend, and then AI SDK for streaming and to create tools. And then I am going to be using OpenAI for a model, but that's optional if you don't have an API key. And then we're going to be using Zod for schema validation, and then TypeScript. So yeah, there's a lot of things we still need to decide, even if AI can write most of our code. And the schedule for today is that we're going to do we're going to start with a running app, and I'll show you around, and then we're going to go through different topics. And you'll have some time to try a task or an exercise for each of the topics. So we're going to look at streaming AI responses, giving the model tools, rendering results as React UI, and then making it production ready. So the format of this is that we're going to have a problem, then we're going to learn a concept, do the exercise, and then we'll be at the next checkpoint until the next task. I'm just going to close this for a second. I hope that sounds okay. Yeah, I'm from Norway. So you're talking about, hold on here. All right. So to be able to participate in the exercises, you're going to need npm or pnpm, an editor, and then an optional API key, and then Node.js. So this is the repository you're going to need. I'll link it in the chat if I'm able to do that, but you can find it on my GitHub. So what we need to do is basically just clone this and then start running it so that we can work together in it. So it is over here. So you'll need to git clone this and make sure that you can run it yourself. Can I post things here? Hold on. Anna will be helping me to distribute the URL. Great. So yeah, this is the repo we're going to be using. So we don't have a lot of time, so I hope you can be quick if you want to participate in the exercises. Nice. Yeah, clone it and then move into the folder and install dependencies and run the development server. And I am actually running it over here. Yes. What are we going to build? We're going to build an AI chat, and somebody's asking about Eve. So I actually built a simple streaming interface, but it's inspired by Eve. So you could use Eve in the future. Eve is Vercel's agent framework, which is very interesting, which I have been using. I'm going to show you our starting point as soon as you guys have had some time to clone this and run it. I'm currently running it here. So this is our starting point. Once you have it running, it's helpful if you can let me know that it's running so that I know approximately how much time people need to set it up. Yeah, it's just over here. It's linked in the chat. It's running. That's great. Some people are quick here. Permission issue. If it's something related to a company laptop, if you have permission issues with GitHub, I don't think I would be able to help you today. If there's something with the repo, then I can help. It's a public repo. It should be fine. Yeah, some people are getting it running. All right. Well, as everybody who wants to participate can continue doing that, I just wanted to talk about the problem that we have in this initial version. So let's say that we don't really know what we're doing, and we're just trying to build a chat interface as some sort of feature in our application. And right now, if you try to send a question, it will, let's actually try it out. So if I send a question in this starter here, I can click the suggested prompts, and then we're waiting for the full answer actually. So this is the fundamental feature we need for a streaming AI chat, is that we don't have to wait for the full response of the model. We want to see something incrementally as it's finishing. So that's our first improvement we're going to make to this. And in the repo, it looks like this. It's using Next.js because I need an API endpoint. because otherwise I don't have anywhere to put my token and do my AI stuff, because that needs to be in some sort of backend. But it's not, that's about the only feature we're using from Next.js. It's just a, well, there's some HTML here, but then our main React component is this chat component. So this is where we're working. So even if you're not familiar with Next.js, you should be okay to work in this React component, which is just inside of chat TSX. So this is our current implementation. It should be pretty familiar if you've used React. We have calling our API endpoint here and getting the answer from our endpoint and setting it into the messages. So that's our starting point here. And another interesting thing I should probably show you. So first of all, I have like a pretty good README here that you can learn about how to run the commands and how the API keys are set up. So I have a env local file, which has this, oh, that's really bad. I shouldn't be showing that API key. I'm gonna, I'm gonna invalidate that later. Anyway, you can put, let me show the sample here. You can put your API key here. And then if you don't have one, it will just fall back to a mock API key. So that even if you don't have an API key, you can still work with the application. So this is created with Next.js. So Create React App is no longer recommended because it's deprecated. So you could be using Vite to create a React app, or you could be creating it with Next.js, which includes a lot of other features too. So I'm using Next.js because I need a backend to call my LLMs. Yeah, so yeah, should be fine even if you don't. But if you want, of course, the chat to actually call the model, you can put whatever key you want here. You can make one from the billing overview in OpenAI and just put like $5, which is what I did. Yeah, so I think that's it for the setup. Now, the first thing we want to build here is streaming AI responses. So right now, the server just waits for the complete, or in our UI, we wait for the complete answer. We disable the input, and then we render everything. What we want to do is stream it from the server and then render each part of the message as it arrives, so that we can keep the interface responsive and have something to read as the LLM is working. Yes. Oops. So that is what I want you guys to do in the first exercise. Since it's the first one, I'm going to show you where you can find it, but you have the starting point, and then I have exercises in here where you'll get now 10 minutes to try to implement the next feature here. So take your time to like get familiar, and what you want to do is fix our first problem here, that we don't have any streaming. And then there's some hints about how you can do that. So for example, there's a feature in ASDK stream text that you probably want to use. And then there's also a hook. So follow this, and then I'll give you 10 minutes to work on this. And feel free to leave questions as you work here. I'll just be here. give you a couple more minutes until I'll show you the way that I would implement it. I know it's really quick for exercises, so if you are using AI to code it, that's great, so that you can learn and try it as you're doing it. Just make sure to read the code and try to understand what it means. Yeah, did anybody find the correct functions and able to get something to be streaming? Done using AI, nice. Yeah, so what you ideally wanted was to change the full blocking response to something that looks more like this, where it actually gives you the text as it's finishing, right? There's a lot of other problems in this chat right now, but at least as the model is working, we can see the result. And based on the exercise task, you could have done something like this, where first of all, this is the diff, but you wanted to change, let me zoom out, from just a regular text await to stream text. So this is from the AI SDK, where you can actually chunk up the LLM response in small pieces and give it to the UI through the API endpoint as soon as it finishes each chunk. So that is the way to stream it here. Yeah, so we're getting the result and returning it as a stream here using stream text. So that's like the base of this. And then in the chat, instead of just calling this API endpoint directly, we can actually use a hook, use chat. So this is pretty simple. We actually got rid of most of our code from AI SDK React, and it will just give us the streamed messages. So we can set them as they complete and render them like that. And this chat composer is just sending a message. Yeah, I actually created a branch of the repo where I'm just gonna push this step by step if you want to use that to follow along. But I'll show you in the end how you can see all of these steps individually, but for now, you'll know that it is here. And if you want to see the result of that, you can use my branch live. Just check out this branch and follow what I'm doing. Now, the chat actually gets the correct API endpoint automatically, but you can also hook up a specific API endpoint if you wanted to change it to like API assistant or whatever. Right. So that's the first task. We're going to move on just so that you can see all the different pieces of an AI chat that you might want to build, even if you didn't finish this one. So let's actually get back to the slides and have a look at the next problem. So I don't know if you saw what happened when I tried to talk to my chat here, but it didn't give me anything useful. Let me just open this up one more time. So basically, the model doesn't have any resources to find any information. It doesn't know what I'm talking about. Doesn't know my app, and doesn't have any permission. So again, if I ask about, add this to the issue, ask about my release, it doesn't have any way to find out what I'm talking about, because this would be behind some sort of access, or it's not enough context for the model to understand what I'm looking for. So to fix this, we need to give the model tools. So we did streaming, which makes the answer visible as the model is running, but it doesn't know anything about our repository and cannot take any action. So we can actually pass a tools object and pass it to stream text, which is the AI SDK function that we used. Then the model can see each description of the different tools and execute whatever it wants to execute based on what we give it access to in that tool. So it's a description plus a schema and then a function on the server. And you'll want to validate and authorize inside of the tool to make sure your agent cannot just like do whatever he wants. So let's have a look at that next task and see how we can add tools. I'm just going to introduce it briefly first. So the next task is here for tools. So we have this mock data pretending to access GitHub in this file, but we don't have anything to connect it to the model. So we need to give it a small controlled way to read repository data and perform actions. So that then we can call these sample prompts over here and actually get, oh, I don't know what this is. I messed something up here. Where was I? Here. That we can actually get a result from this. So yeah, take 10 more minutes to try to add tools to this AI chat. There's a question, reproduce these exercises with Claude. I mean, yeah, I would probably be using Claude if I was going to code something like this, or Codex. Yeah. But definitely follow along and make sure that the app is behaving the way that I want it to, and that it has these different features included in the correct way, and that the user experience is good. I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm I'm going to repeat that. First, I can address the question. Yeah, sorry, guys. It's a very small indicator. Yeah, you should be able to hear me now. You can use Gemini model. You just have to configure your agent here. You can pick different models here. So yeah, so what I've done is I've added tools. So these were like set up with a to-do. For example, the add label tool here, it was to do, describe when the model should add a label. So what you need is a description, what it does, a schema for what it needs to pass, and then the execute function. So here, this is also from AI SDK, this tool, and then it's calling my mock GitHub add label data here. So this is to add a label to this issue, right? And then I implemented all of these, but maybe you only got to a few of them, but you can have another tool to find pull requests that are blocking the release or get the rules of the repository. And then, or search issues. So these are typical tools. Now, to let the agent know how they work or that they exist, I also configured the instructions prompt for the agent, which now says to use the tools to answer questions about issues, pull requests, and releases. And to give the tools to the agent, you pass it into stream text. So we're giving it the tools from the tools here, and then the agent will be able to use these and call multiple tools in order. I also did one more thing, which you don't have to do, but I also added a load skill so that maybe you're familiar with skills. That's like a specific workflow that you can get an agent to do. So I now have a tool to load a skill so that the agent can actually run a skill, which I defined here inside skills, and define a longer task. So now I should be able to click, for example, what's blocking the next release, and it will call the tool and give me the response. Or add the urgent label to issue 474. And it can call the execute function and actually apply this. But that issue didn't exist, but that's fine. All right, pretty cool. We're gonna do one more task here in a bit. How did it go all right? Does it make sense? Are you familiar with tools already? So when you're like using Claude has like, imagine Claude has a instructions file, right, inside of Claude, and then that's telling Claude to modify the file system or, you know, fetch URL. So that's what happened. That's also what's happening under the hood when you're using your Claude or your codex. I'm going to push this so that if you want to run this yourself, it will be on the live branch. I think we can move on. Any questions before we move on about tools or skills? I think you can hear me, but nobody has any questions. All right, let's move on. So next up, we have another problem. So when I was like clicking those suggested prompts, we see the result of the tool, it's working, but we just see this big blob of text. So it's pretty hard for us to process. And that is the next thing we want to solve. And we also don't know what tool is currently running. So that's when we can render the results as React UI and give it some visual, a way to visualize what it's doing. So the model will choose what information is needed, but it can't really send React components. It will just pick a tool and then stream using ASDK the progress of the tool to the client. But we don't have to paint every process of that tool call. We can rather return something when it's ready, so that we can avoid any like intermediate states. For example, we could create a stable component, structure, data, or an error if something went wrong. So that's the next exercise. I think this is the most fun one because it really makes it feel way different than just a stream of text. So let me just introduce it to you quickly. There was a question, I can answer that first. What does load skill do? So it's just giving the agent access to call specific files of skills that define workflows and read it, so that it would know that, oh, I can load this skill and use it by reading this Markdown file. I think this, what's blocking the next release, would now be calling. This is a pretty bad UX. We're going to fix this. Well, no, I don't know what happened. Let's try again. So now it's calling the tool to get a skill, getting the skill, and giving me this consistent format using the skill, so that whenever I ask for release blocking, I will get the same format, predictable here. Anyway, next task is to add, showcase the tool calls as React components. So let's have a look at the exercises and see generative UI. Yeah, so we want to showcase the result of the tool call as UI, make it visible as interface. So hints here, create some sort of typed UI message from the server tools and use it with use chat. And then you can use the existing tool cards that are already created in the components here. So these are the components: tool card, tool error, tool loading. And then you can use this to put the result of the tool into this UI shape. So that's already provided. Yeah, so have a go at that for 10 more minutes. Or maybe, yeah, let's do 10 minutes. I think we can do 10. Nice work if you're already done. Remember to read the code and try to learn something too. We're currently in the middle of an exercise. That's why there's no audio. If that's what you mean. We're going to go for maybe a few more minutes. Hello, can you hear me? Did anybody else also finish exercise 3? We're going to have a look at it in a second. This one's pretty cool. Yep. So we wanted to render UI for tool calls. So what I've done is in the API route, we add a type and we configure this create mock chat. And then in the instructions of the agent, we're just, what are we actually saying here? We're talking about this result card that we are rendering with tool cards. Those are the components that were already available, and using the UI message type to actually render the message parts as tools. For example, the search issue card, release blockers, add label card. So the way this works now is if I go ahead and call a prompt that is going to use a tool. For example, we know that the add urgent label is going to use the apply label tool. It actually has access to render this as a UI component. Or if we want to find open auth bugs, it can show the search issues tools as UI. And then we can even call the release here, which renders the release blockers UI and uses the skill to give us this predictable output. So if you're using mock AI, by the way, it might not work like this, of course, because you need a real LM to get this processing. But yeah, definitely recommend trying with an API key at some point. Right. So we have time for just about the last exercise and then finishing up. So I'm going to commit this if you want to try it. And then we're going to move on to the last one here. So let me just open this. When we're making something that's going to be used in production specifically, we cannot only think about the happy path. We need to be prepared to handle problems. So yeah, you can play around with it, try to break the chat, and what we want to do is handle errors properly. Yeah. So we should be able to cancel from the client to the provider. We should be able to show thinking, responding, complete, and stopped. Keep the input responsive, preserve conversation after failure, and then validate history and return safe errors. So these are like some production behaviors. There's a lot of other things that we also need to do, like authorization and all of that, but this is just a simple app, so we don't have time to go through the whole React, building the whole React app. We're just focusing on the tools and the AI streaming experience. So the last thing I want you to do is here, where we should be able to interrupt requests and recover without losing context. I wonder if I had another exercise for you too. Wait. Oh. Anyway, I'll have a look at that later. I wanted you to also use a better UI component to make the streaming UX better when you're like talking to the model. I don't know what happened to that, but yeah, try this exercise first, and then I'll just give you 5 minutes since we're pretty short on time to just have a look at it and see if you can complete it, and then I'll show you the final chat at the end and go through like our conclusion for the workshop. Yeah, let's just take 5 minutes for this. Okay, I think we're just gonna have a look at the solution here because we want to have time to just go through at the end. And yes, I'm not muted. Good. So what I've done for this task is we're trying to make the error handling more robust here. So previously there wasn't any way to stop a ongoing request and such. Nice work, Sarma. So what I've done is I've added an on error handler, and we're checking the request if it actually succeeded. And in the UI, we can, if we want, display the pending tools. That's helpful. We can show a state whether we're currently streaming, and then get a bunch of additional helpers from use chat here to handle errors better. And this is just a bunch of React code to use the result of those hooks. You don't have to do it exactly like this, but I'm able implemented stop, and here mapping it over and showcasing the result of the hook returns, like if we're thinking, if we're checking the repository, or if there's an error. So now let's say that I refresh this. I can actually click a prompt, and you'll see it's checking the repository, and it's running the tool. And if I want, I can stop this, and then it's done, response complete, right? So it feels way more like a proper, right? We have our error here. Maybe I spent my $10 already. I'm not sure what that error is actually. 404. I will investigate, but now we know that the error is indeed working, which is way better than nothing. Okay. Yeah, this is just an example of how you can build it, but the point is you need error handling, you need retry, and yeah. All right, let me push this. And let's just have a look at what we've done so far and what we can conclude with. So what we built today was a React UI, primarily with streaming, tool states, and recovery. And we used the AI SDK to create these type messages and tool loops. And then we're validating it with Zod. But if you were to use this for your product, of course, you're going to need authentication, permissions, rate limits, spending limits, which I do have. Maybe that's why I got that error. You can also add semantic search, and you're going to most likely need to evaluate the result of your agent and then have some sort of durable execution as well. For example, if you're asking your agent to execute a task and it's quite long and it might fail, you don't want to like run that on your main app and have it break your app. You want it to run it somewhere else and that it can retry in the background. And some of you mentioned Eve. Eve.dev. I have not worked that much with like building agents from scratch, but I have used Eve. So what I built today is actually inspired by Eve. So that's why I did this like tools, skills, agent instructions. I don't know if you've tried Eve, but it has this type of structure where you define the agent, you can add skills, you can add tools. If you want to run code executions in a sandbox. Yeah, I'm not an expert in building agents. So with this, it was pretty easy. So that's why I take inspiration from today. But ours is just a very simple version. Yeah. So if I were to build a real agent, I'd probably be using this. But the patterns are the same, and the same concepts like skills and tools and generative UI. If you would like to look at each of the steps, they're available in the repo. So I was like working in app, but if you want to do each step in your own, or you want to inspect the different states, or not only look at the starter and the final UI, you can, or the final product, you can go through the steps here. And I mentioned, of course, we're here with certificates dev, and we're using today AI SDK and React, but a lot of the work that we did was React decisions and how to structure state, how to render async work, compose components, handle errors. And if you're not familiar with that, or you want to learn how to do all of that properly, definitely recommend considering the React certification to learn how to avoid like buggy, weird UIs and actually get your apps working for production. So that will give you a very structured way to go through all of the content that you're going to need to build production-ready AI apps with React. And if you want to connect with me on social media, you can find my links here. And message me anytime if you have questions. It was a pretty quick workshop, but I hope it was helpful. I wanted you to try your own, try the tasks your own, not only like do slideshow for 1 hour. So I hope that's been okay. And I think that's it for me. Right, I guess I can hand it over to Anna. Yeah, so we have a 40% off. If you want to get your certification, now is the time. I'll be around. All right, we have some questions. So vector databases and RAG. Well, RAG is to give your model relevant context, and a vector database can be used as a retrieval option. I haven't really used that much of this like deeper implementation AI related tools. In this workshop, our repository was very small and structured, so we just did direct tools. But if you have like a lot of unstructured content, it could be helpful with something like RAG, like a lot of documentation or support tickets or policies. Then you can easier retrieve it. How do I set up an environment to work with React so that I don't loop over the same things and so that the code is production ready and secure? Well, first of all, I recommend that you use a framework. If you're building with, let's say, Vite only, you need to set up a lot of tooling around your app to make sure it's following whatever considerations you need to do. So use a framework, use, for example, Next.js, which you get a lot of things out of the box, and a lot of production-ready patterns that you would spend a lot of time implementing on your own, or even not knowing that you would need in the future. Next.js also has a lot of AI tooling. What tools and libraries are used to implement AI in the app? So this was just AI SDK and Zod for validation. So AI SDK is like pretty baseline for any AI streaming app. There's a couple other options, but I think it's the most common one. Yeah, I'll show you the website, AI SDK. Oops. AI SDK here. So this was my primary tool and library here. Yeah, we were doing this. There's like a lot of different ways to use it. Most AI SDK examples end up with chat apps. What design patterns do you use when AI becomes a part of the interface? So I have used AI a lot to run, for example, run code tasks. So I work with Next.js, and if I want to test something, I have some agents that run code or create images based on documentation, or have a lot of context around that. And then you can even use it for just Slack apps or Discord bots. You don't have to make a UI. But if you do have a UI, it's nice to have some sort of agent interface, like a sidebar or, yeah. And typically that AI feature would be callable as a chat, or can be callable in other ways, like through your Slack or messaging apps. So when streaming AI responses with progressive UI Markdown, what is your preferred pattern to prevent layout shift and flickering? Well, one component that I was using, it was there, I just forgot, but I'm using a pretty cool component called Message Scroller. So you probably used ShadCN, but they have this component that basically prevents, that is really great for scrolling in a chat that keeps on growing, so that you don't get this flickering, jumping experience as you're working. And make sure to have fallbacks and like the typing indicator when the model is working. Yeah. Any more questions? Maybe there's no more questions. Hold on, let me just check my, yep, that's it. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope it was helpful, and best of luck with your certifications if you're grabbing that offer. Thank you.